take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Rev.Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Let me say Hotep and Abaragani to my Africana colleagues and contemporaries. And then let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because I find goodbyes traumatizing. I said I have always found goodbyes traumatizing. That's personal. My name is the Rev.Nathaniel W. Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we are being hosted by our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, and we're located again at 8916 South Main Street in the city of Los Angeles, and you're welcome to come and worship with us. We're worshiping tonight, Friday night, beginning at 7 p.m. and on Sundays we have Sunday school, and then morning worship begins around 11:15, and you are welcome to and invited and encouraged to come and see what we're about. You might want to join. It's a good place to join too, and we'll be welcome to have you. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one building, and one service. Thank you, Jesus. So we welcome you. We are in the midst, of course, of the end of the month of March, which was Women's History Month, and we're now coming into the month of April, which we will celebrate Resurrection Sunday in a very few days, Easter as we call it commercially. The offering that you're viewing is a social justice offering, and we call it's a social justice offering based upon the fact that as people, or as Christians, or whatever we are, we cannot fulfill our Christian duty by worshiping God in a vacuum, or trying to worship God in a bubble. You got to be out here where the people are, be out here where I am, and I got to be out here where you are, and we got to make this thing work. If we say we are Christians, then we must put on our Christian duty and serve the Lord through serving one another. You can't do it any other way. You can't stay inside the church. What was that Martin Luther King said, that a lot of preachers were, not a lot of pastors were caught up in the anesthetizing effect of stained glass windows. You can't stay behind those stained glass windows, in other words, and fulfill your duty. You can't stay up on the mountain top and throw down your messages to the people below. That was an old homily that went that this priest was always on the top of the tower there, and he would throw down his messages to the people. And one day the Lord said, call and said, I'm going to call you home. He said, where are you, Lord? I said, I'm down here with the people. So we as Christians, or whatever faith we may be, we can only fulfill our obligations by how we treat one another, how we work with and get along with, and how we relate to one another. So this broadcast is a social justice offering, and we come at it from the two aspects of the environment and the economic aspects. Environment, because you are surrounded by your circumstances and conditions and all of the other adjective and declension that you may find applicable. And as you see in this year, even in this year, how our water supplies are breaking down, our pipes are busting, and then the resulting corrosion and pollution of our groundwater sources. And a prime example, of course, is Flint, Michigan, but it's not the only example. Look at Jackson, Mississippi, as well. And so, yes, we are impacted by our natural environment, and we are impacted by our social environment. I always bring up the example of Breonna Taylor. She didn't know that judge that signed that no-knock warrant that allowed the police to kick down her door, but it affected her. She didn't know the judge didn't know her, but she wound up dead. So your environment is very, very important. You must be aware, and you must impact and have an influence on your environment, because your environment is going to have an impact and influence on you, whether you know it or not, or whether you would like it or not. And so we, as a people, to borrow a word from Ron DeSantis, we must be woke. But we have to be woke in the sense of we are educated enough to begin to affect our environment and affect our economics. I wish I could get an amen on that. Case in point, we are at the point where the former president of the United States has finally been indicted. Somebody put a hand on him, tap him on the shoulder and say, we're going to make you answer for some of these trickerations and machinations and chicanery that you have engaged in so successfully. And we wanted to ask you some questions about some of those things that you have bragged about. Remember, he bragged that he could go out in the middle of Broadway and kill somebody, and the folks would still love him. And now they are going. He has been president and would have been president again if the people had not gotten out and voted in the numbers that they did. Because remember, he increased his vote total from he increased his vote total from 2016 when he ran against Joe Biden. And thankfully, Joe Biden prevailed. I say thankfully because the pandemic was at a rage and Trump didn't know what to do about it. He kept telling folks to that they could just drink Clorox or take Clorox pills. And thank God they got that food out the White House. But now the district attorney of Manhattan, Mr. Alan Bragg, has impaneled the grand jury, and they have returned a 30-count indictment against the same Monsieur Donald J. Trump. And so they want to talk to him about some of these crimes that they feel that he has committed and gotten away with for so long. And now somebody wants to at least talk about that matter. And so hats off to the Manhattan District Attorney. And it's a long time, and it's a great distance between an indictment and a conviction, don't get me wrong. But at least they're getting to the point where somebody is finally doing their job. For a long time, it looked like nobody was taking seriously the list of crimes that Trump had gotten away with. And thank God that the district attorney in Manhattan took it seriously. All right. Now, not only that is going on, but here locally, one of our own people, sad to say, Mark Ridley Thomas, here in the city of Los Angeles was convicted on federal charges of bribery and wire fraud. And he was convicted on yesterday, Thursday, and seven counts he was convicted on. They had a total of 19 counts, and but they convicted him on only 7, and they dismissed the other 12. And so he was a great civil rights leader here in the city of Los Angeles, for those of you that don't know him. And he did a lot of good, especially when he was president of Southern Christian Leadership Council here in the city of Los Angeles. And just goes to show anybody can mess up and get caught. And so we wish to send our condolences to the Margarita Thomas family in this time of their greatest need. All right. Now, going back to Donald Trump, the DA in Fulton County, Georgia, Miss Fannie Willis, is interested in that phone call that Donald Trump made to Brad Raffensperger on January 2nd, 2021, a few days before the January 6th insurrection there in Washington, D.C., in which Trump said he was trying to he only needed 11,780 votes, which is one more than we need. The video has been played constantly on radio and television, but it's always good to go back and refresh yourself on the contents of why Fannie Willis, the DA, District Attorney Fannie Willis in Fulton County, would find that so interesting. So she is gathering information and has been holding hearings, and she has yet to bring her findings to the public light. Well, I take that back, because she has gone to the federal judge McBurney there in the state of Georgia, but they decided that they would not reveal the results of their hearings and investigations, because the people that they had been gathering testimony from or about, some of those people are going to be, like Trump, indicted, and she did not want to publish the report at this time. And that was early in February, and we're now at the end of March. And the Republicans, well, rather the lawyers for Donald Trump, are attempting to get the judge to dismiss the findings of that grand jury report for some other, for other reasons. And Judge McBurney has ordered DA Fannie Willis to answer the reasons why she does not feel that the case should be dismissed or the charges should be thrown out. That's the latest on that from Fulton County, Georgia. In a related situation, to show you that your enemy never gives up on you, the governor, Brian Kemp, and some of the legislators down there in Florida are trying to create a 3-person panel that would be charged with investigating and removing these prosecutors from office, talk about an end run. The enemy never sleeps. The scripture says he goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And that is what the racists and the people that don't like us are doing. They always use the law to their advantage if they can. And if they cannot use it to their advantage, then they overturn the law or skirt the law. And that is what you are witnessing in these attacks. An end run around justice that has the potential to make DA Fannie Willis slow her roll in prosecuting Donald Trump. But I trust that she will, have the courage of her convictions and stick to her guns. And it seems like she is. But it seems also that there is a challenge from the racists who have cast away their hoods. They now wear business suits and ties, but they are as virulent racists as ever. They now are more refined, like a Mike Pence, or a Ted Cruz, but you cannot take your eyes off of them for a second. Remember that they are trying to impanel a three-member panel that would be in charge of investigating the DAs, the prosecutors down there in the state of Georgia. They should have had that panel when Ms. Johnson, DA Johnson, refused to file charges against the murderers, the killers, subsequently, who were convicted of murdering Ahmaud Arbery. Remember that trial almost didn't happen because the DA failed in her duty. She said she didn't see any cause to arrest Greg McMichael and his father. I can't think of the father. Greg McMichael was the father, and then the son was likewise a McMichael. But they were both. The son was the one that you could be seen in the video shooting and killing at point blank range, firing a shotgun into the guts, the stomach, the chest of Ahmaud Arbery. I think he fired 3 times, and Ahmaud Arbery ran away from him a few feet and fell down dead, or was in the process of dying by the time the police come there, and they did not render aid. They let him go ahead and die. Whatever word they used, he quoted that. The point is that the DA didn't file charges, and because she didn't see any crime had been committed, and the DA that she handed the case off to, being a friend of hers, having worked in her office, likewise did not file. Said he did not see that any crime had been committed, but yet this black man was lying dead on the streets there in that city. And it took a third DA to come in and finally file some charges against Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael. Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael. I knew his name would come back to me. In that case, that's when the panel should have been impaneled, but instead the people had to vote DA Johnson out of office. She was running for office at the same time. You hear me? And that's how things work. But the machinations there in Georgia, the political machinations, are still going on, and they're still going strong, and they're still trying to undermine justice. Also, I want to notify Evangelist Roxy Griffiths there in Fort Worth, that the mayor of Fort Worth, what is her name? Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker stormed out of a meeting this week when confronted by her KKK alliances, members of her family, and who are friends or who are friendly with the KKK, and one of her constituents in the city of Fort Worth called her hand, and consequently the mayor felt insulted that anybody would question her past, and she stormed out of the meeting because somebody brought up her KKK alliances. Didn't say she was a KKK, but they brought up her KKK alliances, relationships in her background, in her family, and among her acquaintances and friends. You know, they still have a KKK annual meeting there in Fort Worth yearly. And so the mayor, Mattie Parker, has a soft spot. So I often say, you can't make this stuff up, folks. All right, and I forgot to mention, back to Georgia and the Donald Trump attempt to get 11,780 votes that would put him over the top there. They intimidated, sought to intimidate by calling out her name and putting her on Front Street. Two of the poll workers, Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Wandrea Shea Moss, who worked the election polls there like we do all across the country. But the Trump administration had sought to intimidate these two ladies, mother and daughter, Ruby Freeman and her daughter Wandrea Shea Moss, and what they wound up doing was having them receive honors from the President of the United States, Joe Biden, because they stood their ground. And that's what the deciding factor has been in this debacle of Donald Trump and his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Remember, they went up on the building on the 6th of January 2021, and they had all of that firepower. And if those people had prevailed, then they would have made the electors run for cover. And but they were not able to intimidate them by the events that they caused on January 6th by scaling the Capitol and invading the Congress. And you can see Matt Gaetz running for his life and everything. And these type of things occurred. You see, you had the outside Trump supporters, but then you had another 149 inside Trump supporters who were in the Congress, and they are in control of the Congress as we speak. They control the House of Representatives, and just like their adherents were climbing the walls outside and banging on the doors, and resulting in the deaths of several police officers and killing of one of their own. But they were trying to do on the outside, but these other fellows were trying to do on the inside, because these fellows on the inside were really with those on the outside. And you can't make this stuff up. In other words, you had sympathizers in the Congress with the rebellion, the treasonous folks that were trying to overthrow the stop the count from the outside. All the while, Donald Trump was sitting in the lunchroom looking at television and hoping that they would prevail. The they, of course, being the insurrectionists, the treason, the people who fomented treason. And if any black person had been there, there would have been a whole bunch of killing by the Capitol Police, and by the time the National Guard got there, the bodies would have been all over the place. But it was their own people, white people, and so the reaction of the law enforcement agencies were different. They were very muted. As someone said in the news, were very restrained. They were very restrained. When the Black Lives Matter people were out there, they couldn't get near the White House. They couldn't even get on the street. But when it was the white folks, the Trump supporters and sympathizers, then they were not only able to get on the street and get on the steps, they were able to get in the building and, get in the Congress 5 minutes. And that type of thing. So you see why there's a two-tier justice system, and you can see why a lot of people don't trust the justice system. And of course, that's like we say with this program is entitled, It's Time. It's time for social justice. And we can't give up on social justice because you can see from what we have looked at on this page. You can do an analysis, an evaluation, do some critical thinking, which they don't want you to do. And you can see for yourself that there is a concerted effort to overthrow this government by persons unknown. What persons known? We know Donald Trump. We know Mike Pence. We know Kevin McCarthy. They are in the Congress right now trying to overthrow this government. And you must be aware of it. You can't hide your head in the sand and say that you don't realize what's going on and it's right there in our faces. Yes, they used to say when a Negro was lynched across the South, he was killed at the hands of persons unknown, even though they knew the people who had done the lynching. But they were never prosecuted, never brought to any trial. It's like that woman, her name was Marie. I can't think of her last name. But at any rate, she was what happened was the white folk was over in the black neighborhood trying to do what white boys do at that time, and even now. And she stabbed one of them. And of course, as a result, she was lynched because she protected herself. They were coming over there to rape the women. That's the way they did. And that's the way it was. And they didn't see nothing wrong with it. But when she fought back and killed one of them, then, well, she didn't kill him, but she did stab him and made him get up off of him. But yet, her name was Marie. I shouldn't have brought it up if I couldn't give you her last name. But what wound up happening, long story short, is that they lynched her. And that has always been the way. It has always been their way. So that's nothing new. But the point I was making was that the coroner's report was always said killed at the hands of persons unknown. But they knew who it was. They knew who the people were. But that was always the get out of jail free card, if I may make so bold. All right. For the first time, we have covered up what we had here on paper. I want to announce too that the LAUSD employees won their strike. They got retroactive pay from 2023 to 2019, retroactive. They won a pay increase. They now make $22 minimum an hour, and that was a great accomplishment. So at least that was a plum in the cap of Mayor Karen Bass, even though she's not involved, have any power over the educational system, was yet respected enough that she was allowed to be involved in the negotiations, and she negotiated that deal, and hats off to the LAUSD. Remember, if you're working on the job, they don't want to pay you, take your advice from the slave narratives. If hard work would make you rich, every slave and every housewife would have come out of that with over $1 million in their pockets or in their bank account. If the housewife ain't rich and the slave sure ain't rich, that means just hard work alone does not cut it. If you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you, take my firm advice and don't work for them. Thank you, Doc. We out of here. Love you.